Hello, and welcome back to Coffree with John. I'm your host, John, and on today's episode we'll be discussing stars and epicness, something we all deal with, especially in the modern age. But do we ever really take time to talk it out, think about it, get deep into what it means to be a star, what it means to be epic? We throw the terms around a lot. I figured it'd be cool. Get into like a little deep meditation on that as the train rolls through our subconscious. Well, as you might have surmised by now, I live in Los Angeles, so Los Angeles, and I may be going out on a limb here, as far as I know, or as far as I can tell, Los Angeles is the only city in the world that is nakedly built its economy and culture around a star system, which of course we take a lot of heat for, because it's on the facade of it, on the front of it, it's a really egotistical thing to do. So Los Angeles gets misunderstood a lot of the time as being a terribly shallow and egotistical place, which, don't get me wrong, it is. Just like any other place that has groups of powerful people, good-looking people, it can be very shallow and very egotistical. But in terms of just the fact that we're like, look, this is a city where you can be a star, and that is the primary mover of our economy. Yeah, it doesn't always rub people the right way, because it goes against that old world work hard, slave yourself to death, trade your labor for money mindset that they instill in a lot of the workforce around the world for centuries and centuries. Of course, that's the same mentality that gave birth to the feudal system, hopeless empires, and complete lack of freedom and democracy as options. So take that as you will. It's good coffee today. But I'm putting the horse before the cart here. I think we should like figure out, like, for starters, we all have some stars we love, right? So when I say star, people think like Hollywood, movies, TV, whatever, right? But the thing is that's selling what stars are short, because there's stars in every walk of life. Every walk of life. It doesn't matter if you're in tech, it doesn't matter if you're in finance, military, law enforcement, even the most pedestrian things. I guarantee if you go to like some village in Vietnam, there's one dude that's like, he's the star farmer. 100% guarantee you. Like, everybody in the village knows that motherfucker. They're like whatever, like Tran Fam, that dude, man, you haven't even, like, that guy, not only are his farms like perfect, that guy puts on a seasonal banquet like you wouldn't believe. He's got dancers, that guy's got personality. He'll host the shit out of like the, like the fall equinox, like the autumnal equinox harvest party. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. See, what I'm getting to is the fact that stars they're sociological functions, right? They're nodes. And in the process of watching a star have a function, and then they become a node, a sociological node, based on whatever their core function is. So for instance, like Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs' core sociological function was that he was here to innovate tech in a number of different ways. And he did. And so we know him for Apple, but he also did, he's also responsible for making Pixar what it is. He's also responsible for doing a lot of the core engineering of the internet itself. And what we see is that once enough people realize what a star's core function is, or what they can handle, then the obligations and the sociological nodes that they anchor, we see as fame. That's how we perceive people putting attention, awareness, adulation, or wanting to do business with or do projects with a particular star. We see that fame is the byproduct of that particular core function that the star provides. So once again, it doesn't matter whether like you're the rock star farmer in your village or, you know, you're Jim Carrey. You have some sort of, let's say, essential skill set that people need, and a lot of people need it. And so that becomes another sort of like job requirement of a star, is that like not only do you have to be really good at your core function, but then you also have to be able to deal with the public, which that becomes an interesting thing in of itself. And then I think at that point, the point at which one determines a style in which to deal with the public, that's what defines them as a celebrity, what we in modern times know as a celebrity. Because there becomes a level of the star themselves, they understand that they have a function, they understand that they become the sociological node for a great number of people, and when they become self-aware of that full package, then they become a celebrity. How you doing? And every celebrity has their different style, and on the face of it, the different styles, right? Like, let's talk about different like celebrity styles before we break this down. So like, yeah, different celebrity styles. Like, for instance, so Steve Jobs, his celebrity style was utilitarian, minimalist utilitarian. He goes with the turtleneck, he goes with the, you know, the frameless reading glasses. He puts off this like, I'm super focused, quasi monk tech guy sent here to innovate shit in a very, very straightforward, you can trust me, I know I'm a white guy from the European colonial patriarchy, but I'm not one of those guys. I'm an acid dropping, ashram going, progressive visionary, pro-humanist futurist, with like a bit of Bauhaus, like an ashram Bauhaus guy. So that, you know, that's like Steve Jobs kind of thing. And he didn't always get it right. I mean, if you dig into his personal life, he did a bunch of shit that was like wrong, and he had a bunch of problems at fault. But for what his overall pledge to society was, society, you get out there and you find that fucking dog. His overall pledge, is sort of like unspoken promise to society, was, yo, I'm gonna be the dopest tech guy, and I have a conscience, so I'm not just here to do bad business. I'm here to like hook people up. And, you know, that was really at the core of, if you weren't around for the 80s and 90s, the core of like the Apple versus Microsoft thing. It was a cult of personality battle, and it was Steve Jobs on the one side representing more spiritual, consciousness-oriented form of tech, and on the other hand, you had Bill Gates being a guy who's just like, you know, I'll suck your dick for crack, and I'll sign a contract with the government, and you can data mine us, you can do whatever you want, because I'm here and show me the money, you know. And so that was the battle at that time for people who knew, was, you know, Apple were the good guys, and Microsoft were the guys that were here to enforce some sort of globalist technocracy. Which jokes on everybody, because it turns out Google was the one building the global technocracy for China. Didn't see that one coming. Sorry, China, you're all slaves. Anyway, back to the styles. So Steve Jobs has this utilitarian Bauhaus style, right? So you take him, you take Steve Jobs, right? Okay, boom, that's that style, right? And then you take Elton John, right? So Elton John obviously has a different style than Steve Jobs, and Elton John's style obviously is it's very ostentatious. He's this sort of human peacock. It's all expanding the limits of fashion and what's acceptable for the sort of like the baseline of normal human behavior in terms of fashion and colors and all these things, right? And he's not a guy that he doesn't just leave it on the stage. That's part of who he is. It's an expression of who he is. And on the face of it, you go, man, that's like a lot of people think, oh, they look at somebody that's really flamboyant like that, and they say, oh, well, that's not as utilitarian as Steve Jobs in the style. It's just like, it's very ornamental. But if you actually look into it, and I think you find this is true with most styles, is that it was truly an evolutionary feature for Elton John to develop that type of flamboyant style. Because when you look at celebrities, they're dealing with such a mass amount of people that I feel like a good equivalent is when you go deep sea diving, or you look at footage of deep sea diving, and you see these different creatures who they've had to develop evolutionary features based on extreme circumstances. And in their case, the extreme circumstances being the idea that they're in the depths and light is not getting down there at the regular ratio that light hits the majority of species on Earth that we're used to. So their evolutionary tracks have to maximize or optimize their environment for the dearth of light that they're receiving, and for their continued biological functions. So celebrities, in the same way, I think it's interesting because the metaphor is good, but it's kind of the opposite. It's like they're going to great heights instead of depths, and instead of going into great darkness, they're going into great light. But if you're familiar with polarity, a lot of polarity is interesting because the principles on both sides of polar opposites are usually the same. They're just expressions of the different principles in those polarities, and that's why polarities are connected. Because at the core of it, you have a set of principles, and on the one end, you have sort of the emphasis being placed on one set of the principles, and on the other end, you have the emphasis being on the other sets of the principles, which it makes it interesting. So in this case, for the celebrities being in a great amount of light, they have to develop these evolutionary features in order to deal with, in their own way, and to serve their own sociological function, their relationship with the masses. And so in Elton John's case, it makes a lot of sense because he's constantly performing in front of a ton of people. He's putting out a lot of energy, a lot of light. He has a very flamboyant personal life. He's a very personally attractive person. He's promoting a sort of wild partying lifestyle, a good vibe. His product is good vibe and connection and social currency. And so he's the guy who, as the idol of that crowd, embodying the principles of the crowd that he's in front of, he's dressing that way to be like, okay, look, this is sort of the apex of this crowd, of this social scene. And a lot of times you find that that's with celebrities, is one of their other main things that they have to do, one of the reasons they exist. So people will go, oh, whenever you talk about, not so much stars, people get stars because they're used to it in different fields, but if you talk about celebrities, inevitably, and for good reason, people want to bring up celebrities that don't seem to have a lot of skills, which is fine. And I used to do that too once I looked more deeply into it. And at a certain point, when you look at those types of celebrities, let's say you think someone's empty, like a Kardashian or the Jersey Shore cast, or I don't know who would be a more modern empty celebrity, but there's a lot of them, right? And you think, oh man, they don't have any skills, they're not very smart, right? Well, here's the thing. Those celebrities that seem empty, what they really are is they're the embodiment of their fan base. There's 20, 30, 40 million, people who look at a particular celebrity like that and they go, oh man, well, I could never handle that, but I'm down with that. They see enough of themselves in that particular person that they're sort of their representative to the house of celebrities. Because you have celebrities, let's imagine celebrities are set up like our government. Let's say you have a House of Representatives and you have a Senate, right? for celebrities. Well, your House of Representatives, it has your lesser functional. The House of Reps have your lesser functional celebrities. It has like your reality show people, people like the Duck Dynasty people, most of your reality show people, news anchors, local weathermen, mid-range sports stars. For instance, like, a lot of guys too, they'll be like, oh man, like celebrities and stars, like, I don't know, it's so like, they'll just be like, oh, that's gay or whatever, because it has to deal with social interaction. It's basically like a soap opera, but like, surprise, what do you think ESPN is? ESPN is just soap opera for men. There's just men like more rules in their social interactions, and that's what the sports are. I mean, you could go to the most closed-hearted dude in Green Bay, and if you start talking Brett Favre to him over a beer, the guy will be in fucking tears in like 10 minutes. It's like talking about his boyfriend or something. So men confront, but they're all lying, because sports are just soap opera for men, and it's great. There's no shame in it. And it's great because sports as soap operas, you can compare them through the eras, and so it appeals to the rational side and the emotional side, which is great. So a lot of, like, if you look at sports stars, for instance, and they're stars because they serve a function. They have a core function, whether it is they can play their particular sport very, very well, and they're somehow meaningful to their team. And so on that level, they're a star. And in most major cities, I'd say, let's take, we'll use LA. So in LA, if you're one of the top 10 players on the roster for either the Clippers or the Lakers, pretty much the whole city's going to know you. If you're pretty much anywhere on the roster for the Dodgers or Angels, most of Southern California is going to know who you are. If you're a starter on the Rams, people are probably going to know you. If you play for the Chargers, we're just going to tell you we wish you were in San Diego. Hockey doesn't get the ratings, but like, the handful of stars on the Kings definitely, especially if you're in Manhattan Beach, they should just like rename that place like Manhattan Kings. They're gonna know who you are. Point being that you get a certain amount of like minor celebrity being a sports star, especially in a major city, and you're also serving a function on your team. So those guys, if they're not superstars, they would basically be like in the House of Representatives for celebrities, because really what they're doing is they have a district. Really what you're saying with these like lower level celebrities and stuff is they have a district of people they embody, and they're sort of those people's ambassadors or representatives to the public consciousness in whatever way they deem fit. Whatever their style is, as we were talking about earlier, like as they go more and more through the process, they develop a style in order to deal with the amount of exposure and responsibility they have. And don't kid yourselves, they pick up a lot of responsibility. Now, before we get further in this metaphor, I think it'd be good to, one of the things that's good to identify about stars and celebrities, is really, especially people that are both, is that in order to achieve it, you have to satisfy in the minds of many, many people, a tipping point amount of people, that you have somehow done something so epic or transcended the bounds of normal human behavior so much as to satisfy people's spiritual, mental, and emotional calculation of you as a person. That you somehow are doing something that can absolutely not be replicated by them, anyone they know, a normal person, or even like a handful of other people that they highly respect. You have to trip that line. You have to be able to trip that line into an area where people, and just millions of people, have to go, no, I couldn't do that. Like, that person is special, right? And in doing that, it can't just be a one-time feat of epicness. It has to be something, has to be a continued thing that demonstrates transcendence. You have to get over so many things. Social conditionings, timelines, modes of thought, modes of speech, action, whatever it is. You have to demonstrate it so thoroughly and for so long that it overcomes everyone's personal philosophies, personal religions, opinions, haterism, anything. It has to trip that line, a timeline where people go, this somehow in us, we know that when we see something from a true celebrity or star, that it somehow has a greater resonance, that it almost might live forever, that it has somehow transcended the human biological experience, and it's going to continue forward. And when that occurs, when that calculation occurs, throw out the social node that that star or celebrity has like created, that people are attached to that person. And when that shockwave goes out and people realize it together, that's when that person truly gets entered into the consciousness as the ambassador for that thing and for whatever that thing is that we like about that person. A great example of this is Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman started off his career, we'll use this metaphor again of this like Senate and House of Reps of celebrities, right? So Dennis Rodman, he starts his life, he's just a normal dude. He got kind of a rough start. He's like in the Midwest, he's doing all this stuff. He's having to deal with normal human stuff, right? He's a black dude in the Midwest. He's got all this stuff in him that he doesn't know how to express yet. He hasn't even really figured out basketball yet. He's like, I think he's playing at a junior college, like in Oklahoma or something, living with a family. I think that's right. Like I said, I might be right or I might be wrong on some of these things. Feel free to fact check me. It's all good. Pretty sure. So he's out somewhere in the Midwest. He's playing like junior college ball, dealing with stuff. Family takes him in. They kind of foster him a bit. At this point, he's a nobody. You know, he's just like anybody else, trying to like, hey, you know, I'm trying to play basketball, junior college, and like get some stuff going. Yeah, it's admirable. Just trying to do it. Anyway, at some point he figures out basketball, right? So he figures out basketball. He figures out well enough to get drafted into the NBA, which is amazing. If you think about, wow, that guy figured that out. He got hired in the NBA. So now he's playing for the Detroit Pistons. Dennis Rodman is still a normal ass dude at this point. Okay? He's a really, really good basketball player. He's a professional basketball player. And he's figuring out a niche in the game that's allowing him to get really, really amazing at basketball. And it was defense and rebound. Hello. So Dennis starts figuring this out. He starts decoding the matrix on basketball, defense and rebounding, right? Then it starts turning into a little bit of mind games, right? A little bit of mind games. Starts realizing that, whoa. Whereas once before, like, he thought, oh man, maybe I have mental problems or whatever. It turned out he just hadn't figured out how to focus his tremendous psychic and intellectual powers yet, right? So he plays basketball. His fame in basketball starts to go up and up and up and up, right? Now, he's still not even at a point yet where he can be in this celebrity House of Reps yet. He's not even there. He's starting to like become like close to an all-star. Maybe he is an all-star at this point, whatever. And he's starting to feel himself. Now, at a certain point, you can check the timeline, Madonna comes into his life, right? And I think this is after he does his hair. He starts coloring his hair. He starts like embracing it, right? And I don't know if it was like which came first, chicken or the egg. I don't know which came first, hair coloring or Madonna. Right around the same time, he starts getting famous for doing outrageous hair dye jobs on his hair, and he just starts leaning into his weirdness and creativity, and then he starts banging Madonna. And this is when Madonna's also like in her prime. So Rodman and Madonna are coming together in their prime, and she starts empowering him. And she tells him just like, look, you're doing it now. Like, this is who you are. You dialed in basketball. You got your skills. Now your personal style's come to the forefront. Now it's time for you to sort of be born into this celebrity version of Dennis Rodman, right? Okay, so now at this point, right before Madonna comes in, Rodman's getting close to being in this like house of reps of celebrities, right? Madonna rolls in, and the league didn't really know what to do. Like, the NBA was like, it was already weird enough for them, because you gotta remember in the 90s, there was not openly, the culture was not openly accepting homosexuality, bisexuality, and anything that was considered a flamboyant lifestyle was associated with bisexuality or homosexuality. So the NBA was like, we don't really know what to do, because they hadn't admitted any of this stuff was real. And then here's Dennis Rodman, who was like, Dennis Rodman was clearly not a heterosexual in the 90s, and here he is, he's running around with like dyed hair, nose rings, and like getting in people's heads, and he's playing the game way better than most people, and then he's like out there with Madonna, and then at a certain point he has this wedding ceremony for his book, and he shows up in a wedding dress and marries himself, which on the face of it, for starters, is great. That's great performance art. As a performance artist myself, who's done some outrageous things, I can only imagine the balls it takes to get that famous, to have that much of a reputation, and then to show up at your own book signing in the height of your prime in a wedding dress during that time, and just be like, yo, here I am, right? And so Dennis does that, right? Now, that's the day where Dennis is like, I love myself, I'm marrying myself, I'm an out now global celebrity, right? Now, on that day, when he hit that wedding dress, whether he knew it or not, okay, he firmly went deep into the house of reps of celebrities. He was no longer just a basketball player, right? Now Dennis, he's in this house of reps, deep in it. Like, pretty permanent seat for that type of thing, because he'd already had a body of work. He'd had a body of work that was like, look, you get it. I'm a craftsman, I put in my dues, all this stuff. You've seen me evolve in the public eye, and now I'm just gonna, throw it on the table and put my balls on the table. Here you go. I'm marrying myself. You can think whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. I'm Dennis Rodman. Peace in. He's like, I'm buying in on this shit, right? So at that point, he's like deep in the house of reps, and you're thinking, man, this is crazy good, right? So Dennis continues that. He rides that wave. He rides that wave till the end of his NBA career, of that very like shocking, we'll say like blossoming into celebrityhood, okay? And whenever stars become celebrities and they embrace it, then they inherently become artists with life. They become life artists, because now they have so much attention, they have so much style, and they're so self-aware that at that point, anybody who achieves that moment, life becomes their canvas. It simply does. And Dennis knew that, and that's what Dennis was announcing when he, married himself. So Dennis rides this wave, right? He explodes out. He says, hey, I'm a celebrity. I love myself. I get what I am. I'm super creative. I'm dope. You're welcome along for the ride. And he's very, very loving. He's like a super loving, universal being. He's just down for a good time, and he's out there with his heart on his sleeve, and he just welcomes all the energies. And he admits that, like, he's got his own problems, and he's kind of a rough ride, but he's just willing to throw himself on the fire of, social graces. So he rides this wave out pretty much through the end of his NBA career, which was just a stellar NBA career. Like, just as a sports player on its own, Dennis Rodman is just one of the most entertaining basketball players you've ever seen, regardless of any of the theatrics. Like, the way he played the game, the way he figured things out, and the teams he was on. I mean, he was a champion. He won championships. I think he won his first one with the Pistons, pretty sure. Fact check. Definitely won with the Bulls and the Spurs. And the guy was just a fucking winner. He's just a winner. Not only he's this amazing, person, he's just a fantastic winner, champion. And he's out here championing all these other causes, right? So he rides this wave to the end of his career. Then he gets to the end of his career, and he still has this celebrity spot in the consciousness. And he decides, hold on, we got the authorities. So Dennis, he's firmly in this house of reps of celebrities, right? Probably has a permanent spot at this point for all the stuff he's done, for all these different groups, and how much he's entertained people and opened his heart and all this stuff. Then, after basketball, he decides to engage in basketball diplomacy with Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea. It's like totally out of left field, which is totally on brand for Dennis. And he goes, like, he, from his heart, sincerely from his heart, he thinks that, like, yo, I have this ability to crack open communications with this isolated dictator. And he felt in his heart that just opening up a line of communication in whatever capacity would be good for humanity, right? That's where Dennis is at. Dennis is like, he's just like, look, I'm a basketball player and I got a nice style, but like now the universe put me in a position where I can go talk to a dictator, maybe like, I don't know, save the planet from a nuclear exchange, right? That Dennis Rodman's a weird life. And so he goes, and it's weird. People don't like it. Some people like it, but like a lot of people, like, it disrupts the natural order of things because he's a non-governmental actor. He's truly a free person. So he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go talk to this dictator and play some basketball and like see if we can bro down. Maybe something good will come of it. That's where Dennis is coming from. So he does, right? And it's like, oh, this is kind of weird. So Dennis does it. Fast forward years later, turns out it did sort of crack it open for to have open dialogues. Now you can like do political analysis all day long about whether it resolved anything, or like, you know, whether North Korea is still being super gamey, or, you know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Point is, Dennis's gambit worked. Like, he went in and he opened a line of communication through basketball, and then at some point the U.S. was able to like actually have some talks with this, you know, little knucklehead. And at that point, Dennis got put into the Senate in this celebrities, you know, government sort of structure. Like, he went from House of Reps, now he's got a permanent seat in the Senate of House of Celebrities because he did it. Like, he went from local fuck around fame for like social issues and stuff, which are important, don't get me wrong, they're important, but then he went and he played big ball. He played ball with the big boys with no one's permission. He's just like, yo, I'll make a global power move, right? And that's what got him a seat in the Senate. So it was his star power and his celebrityness came together, and because he was aware of it and down with it, then life gave him a unique opportunity. That was not an opportunity that anyone else could have had. No one else had the particular panache, the basketball skills, the whole package. That was a opportunity unique to Dennis Rodman, and nobody would have faulted Dennis for just being like, oh, that's stupid, I'm just gonna keep partying in Newport Beach and, you know, banging it out, having a good time. Nobody would have been mad at Dennis for that, and he still would have had his seat in the House of Reps. But he went all in, dude. He went big baller. He went in, and in his own way, he changed the world. Like Dennis Rodman, just some dude from, you know, who was playing junior college basketball in the Midwest. That dude was like, he never thought he's gonna like end up meeting with a rogue dictator of a nuclear armed nation. That never once crossed his mind. He wasn't banging Madonna going, oh yeah, this is getting me ready to meet Kim Jong-un. I guarantee you that did not go through his mind. So Dennis did. So Dennis changed the world, and now he has a permanent seat in the Senate of Celebrities. You know, and in that Senate, now that you understand where I'm coming from, my viewpoint on it, obviously this thing doesn't exist except maybe in my own mind. But that's sort of the threshold to get a Senate seat. So like, there's a lot of House of Reps people, right? Like, we won't even discuss the House of Reps people right now. The Senate is people like, you know, Dennis Rodman, you know, Bono, Oprah, Jim Carrey, Paul McCartney. You know, these people who they actually, in a truer capacity than most elected officials, are the true leaders of the world in a lot of respects. Now, they're not out there pulling the levers on things, but they are actually the most democratically elected representatives that we have. and they live beyond election cycles. They influence those who are elected. They can actually get meetings with the people who are elected in office at those times. And when they reach that level in this celebrity senate, we've all sort of agreed that they are some degree of enlightened being, which means that they have like somehow expressed to us a bond and a pledge to do the right thing in their capacity for the masses in the capacity that they can. And in that sense, you know, those are our true representatives, because when Paul McCartney sits down with world leaders, he isn't having a conversation to try to steer somebody into an arms deal. You know, Bono's not trying to sell you his new fighter plane. But when you sit down with any of the top 5 leaders of the free world at the Security Council, somewhere in the back of their mind, they're trying to figure out how to sell you a military package. Or they're trying to like somehow advance a national agenda that may be tied to the bottom line and not tied to quality of life or global human rights. But I guarantee you that when somebody sits down with Steven Spielberg or, you know, Tom Hanks or Meryl Streep or any number of other human rights advocates who happen to be stars, they're going to sit down and have a conversation with you that has an enlightened destination. And they're going to try to bring people into a state of understanding and harmony with ethical and moral responsibilities. And in that way, these people they're more truly are like representatives of the culture of the consciousness than the elected officials. And now we need the elected officials to be properly in tune with the consciousness, but they also have to deal with realities that these other people have been sprung from. Because the other thing too is like, when a person demonstrates transcendence, then they essentially become uncontrollable, or at least untrustable in a very labor-based market. Once you've seen that a worker is comfortable jumping on a desk and dancing around in front of 100 other workers, and that they're comfortably telling everybody that reality is a joke and that, like, you know, they should just be enjoying themselves, and that all of the economic rules that are enslaving them are arbitrary and bullshit and set up against them, it makes it very difficult for management to trust that person in a job again. So part of the thing is that when a celebrity or star demonstrates transcendence in the initial stages, because for sure now we know Dennis Rodman's a star, he's a celebrity, whatever, but in those early days, you don't really know if that person is really demonstrating any true mastery of self-awareness and consciousness and transcendence, or if they're just like sort of like acting out, the blowing off steam. Because a lot of people do blow off steam, but they don't continually demonstrate excellence in that regard. But once a star or celebrity does, then the society have to make choices, because now they're essentially rogue actors. Because most governments and certainly economies aim to project control on the population or the workforce. That's just how it goes. And once a person demonstrates those qualities, what it really signals to us is that they can't ever go back in the box. Now, they may be able to go back in the box for small periods of time, but they can't go back permanently. And then that's why they have to be put into what I was talking about with like Los Angeles, this, you know, a star economy, a star system. Now, every city and every sociological structure has stars. And they have all different disciplines: doctors, lawyers, firefighters, actors, athletes, farmers, mothers, midwives. It doesn't matter, like, or super aggro drivers. Every single society has stars. Every sociological structure has stars. And if the stars if they get enough energy and they do their craft long enough and well enough, and they become self-aware enough and celebrated enough, then they become celebrities. And that engages other obligations and other job responsibilities that are more, let's say, metaphysical in nature. Because what we expect of celebrities is that they have some sort of spiritual dimension to them. They've achieved an ethical and consciousness mastery that has somehow enabled a level of transcendence that we can't necessarily understand, even if they try to explain it to us in a straightforward manner. But we overall feel it. We feel a sense of elevation or healing or connection to a higher, more ideologically like pure dimension. And it can be explained both through like spirituality and metaphysics. They're just accessing a higher plane of existence. You know, and really that's the secret sauce of, like, if you look at any celebrity and you look at their craft, it doesn't matter who they are, their craft is being fueled by their connection to these higher dimensions. And that's sort of their special sauce, like. But it's not something, their sort of like conundrum is they're not allowed to express what that is, because it's like a contradictory thing where they can't tell you that they're connected to a spiritual realm or a transcendental realm while they're doing what on the face of it looks like incredibly shallow, materialistic, ego-driven action. Now you get some exceptions, like some people are allowed to. Like if you look at David Lynch, yeah, everybody knows David Lynch is this dude living in a mystical realm, and like somehow he's just like formed out of the abyss to be able to make movies for us or like talk to us. But even people who just look like stupid, like run-of-the-mill, like couldn't be shallower. Like let's take Kardashian for instance. Like at her level of fame and celebrity, like yeah, dude, she's like tapped into all sorts of transcendental things. Once you see enough big data trends, sociologically speaking, the human brain is just designed to compute these sociological big data trends and compute essentially universal spiritual algorithms. And your brain connects the dots for you once you have enough experience. And then you go, oh shit. I'm starting to see like the laws of karma. I'm starting to see the stories of people, the stories of beings, the stories of interaction, all of these data points that one needs in order to activate, I guess what the Eastern philosophies or New Age philosophies call it, your crown chakra. Like you have to activate all these chakras to get the emotional information, the sociological information you need, so that at some point when the crown starts to open up, it's making all these big data points connecting, and it's starting to create a synergy within the mind. And then once that happens, then the human body can open up as a sort of antenna in a universal manner to start letting a lot higher level energies flow through. And I think part of the process of those people getting enlightened is that you have to go through all the experience and the meditation and the thinking and stuff just to be able to open yourself up enough so that when you actually start connecting to life itself, which is a very, very, very big proposition, that as the information flows through, you already have the programming and the experience so that as the information flows through, it doesn't blow you apart. It's like basic electrical engineering. And the crown chakra is the thing that at some point, what I've seen with celebrities, no matter how like seemingly dumb or shallow that person is, if they get exposed to enough sociological structures and experiences, at some point it just has to happen. They have a choice. It really comes down to two things. They either have a nervous breakdown or they get enlightened. And in a lot of cases, the nervous breakdown precedes the enlightenment. So it just depends. And then once you look at these different people and you realize, whoa, they're enlightened to different degrees, they have different skill sets, then you can start to sort of peg them for their sociological utility, or like what can they do for the world or their audience, or however you want to define it. So basically, like your House of Reps, your celebrities in the House of Reps, some are like, I think, some are like, they're quasi-enlightened, and some more so than others. But really, to get into that Senate where you're talking like you're hanging out with the big boys, and by the way, McCartney and Bono and those guys, they may be like in the executive branch. I don't know, maybe they're like the head of the Senate, or maybe they're even like the president of this completely made up fucking fiction in my mind about these celebrities trying to organize them. Who knows? But you figure in the House of Reps, a lot of them like enlightened to semi-enlightened, but really what it takes to go into that Senate area is they have to own it. Like Russell Brand, same kind of deal. He's just kind of like a hedonist, dicking around, doing a bunch of drugs, sort of like starts accidentally getting enlightened, starts matriculating through the media machine, goes to the House of Reps, he's like, hey, I'm a movie star, VJ, comedian, sexy yogi guy. And then at a certain point, he really starts getting like full on enlightened, and he's like, oh shit, I'm getting enlightened and I like it. I'm going to drop out all this stuff and I'm just going to start being sort of a rogue actor. And that's when he's kind of like, I think he's in that entry level of that Senate, because now he's just a conduit for the universe and like universal energies and thoughts, and he's just throwing it out there. In a similar way that Joe Rogan is. Joe Rogan's firmly in that Senate now. Joe Rogan's changed the world. Joe Rogan, wherever you are out there, you have firmly changed the world, my friend. You have firmly changed the world for the better. You have great freedom zone. You're rocking world-changing guests. You're sharing space. You're giving people a chance to think for themselves just by like turning it on. You're still willing to play the rules. You could have left YouTube when they started just dicking with you. They're playing politics. They're trying to shape the consciousness. It's not the free-for-all it was even like 5 years ago. So thanks for sticking in there. Point being, you get to this Senate level, and once you get to the Senate level, you have global responsibilities, and more to the point, people know. I remember I worked for a general in Germany back in 2001, and one of the things about it was the fact that there's all this established protocol, and from the outside, protocol looks like bullshit. You're like, what is all this pomp and circumstance, and like, why is it so regimented and everything? And then from the inside, the absolute utilitarian necessity for protocol becomes apparent, because the general's such a powerful person, constant decision maker, top level decision maker. That's all the guy is. That when a general shows up, the protocol, it's like a 20-80 split. 20% of the protocol is for the general, 80% of it is for everybody else that has to deal with the general showing up that day. Most people are not exposed to that amount of power at any point in their life. It's a tremendous amount of power. So the protocol is there to ensure the safety of the people being exposed to the power. That's what I learned by working with them. And so protocol becomes essential. And in the same way, when celebrities hit the Senate level, there's a protocol that goes with them. Why? Because they're super powerful beings and they affect things. And that way it's a good split of, we know what to expect of them, and then they know that they can come in and that there are expectations on them as well. So it works for both parties, because the celebrity at that level, they have obligations. They're unspoken obligations, because they're lightning rod for hopes and dreams, aspirations, and embodiment of a great number of different things and energies. And when they show up hey man, you know, it's game on. That's their job, is to resolve those things, or to channel them, or to acknowledge them, or to just connect with people. And so in that way, you know, there's celebrity protocols, and the more powerful or the nature of the celebrity determines like the level of protocol and like what's going down. You know, for an easy example of that, you look at Beatlemania. I mean, they were just causing like civic unrest, essentially. People just losing their fucking minds around the Beatles. I mean, those are like the 1960s Brits, you know, like at the height of make everybody conform to, in a very bureaucratic, civil, administrative sort of way. And the Beatles show up, and you know, they're not exactly the Ramones, you know, like, but it is whatever, dude. They just lit a fire under everybody, and they're just like running through the streets, losing their goddamn minds. And so they're having to come up with protocol on the fly. But I think it's fascinating. You know, I think it's fascinating to see public reaction to that type of celebrity, because a lot of those people, I've met a lot of celebrities and stars from all walks of life, from like political to sports to arts, whatever, and I get something different out of each experience. They light me up in some sort of different way. I mean, I've met Dick Cheney. I learned a lot by meeting Dick Cheney. That dude's a piece of shit, and he's a fucking war criminal, and you can tell the Hague I said that. And then you have like Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe's like amazing, you know, hanging out with that dude, and like, and everything in between, and you get something different out of each person, and they light you up in a different way, which is interesting, because that, in that way, now that we know that these celebrities are kind of like up here, you really get to see in a very philosophical manner the spectrum of what we all have inside ourselves. I think that's really the great lesson of the epicness and of the transcendence and of all these crazy ass things that stars and celebrities bring to us. I think at the end of the day, the great gift that they provide for us on the ground is that you can look at them in the sky, metaphorically, and you get to see this huge spread, this great spectrum of where humanity, if you take out certain qualities and traits and styles out to their absurd ends, where they end up. And by being able to observe that, even though we ourselves may not be able to do it, or some of us do, we can see what we're packing inside ourselves. Because at the end of the day, us as a species, as Homo sapiens, we're working with the same stuff on the inside. All the same, you know, consciousness, ethics, all these different things. And so when you get to see these people that take it to the extremes, we really get to see a played out version of what's inside ourselves. And I think that's the great utility that this sort of brand of people brings to the table. So now, I'm sure I missed some stuff. I'm sure, you know, we could go on and on about this subject. I think it's endlessly fascinating, both because it's just fun to look at famous people, and also because I do think that they're super deep, and they're living super deep lives, and they're very useful for us. And if they weren't useful for us, then they wouldn't exist. That's kind of how life seems to work. If it has a utility, it resonates, and if it doesn't, it sort of, you know, dissolves. Well, thanks again for sharing a cup of coffee with me, John, your host. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you're enjoying your life. And hey, you know what? Do something epic today. Do something inspirational. Live that life that you want to live. You won't regret it. It might be hard, but you won't regret it. So I hope you have a great day, and you guys are awesome. Good one.